At 2:03 a.m., Eva Butler was counting the last 38.17 in a plastic envelope when the bell above Riverside Laundry's door rang. Her 8-year-old son Noah slept across 3 plastic chairs, his head resting on Eva's coat. One foot wore a blue rocket sock. The other was wrapped in a clean hand towel. Walter Bennett, the building owner, stepped inside, snow melting across his shoulders. Eva rose immediately. "Give me 5 minutes. I'll wake him up. We'll leave." Walter said nothing. He turned and locked the door behind him. Then he reached into his coat and placed something small and blue on the folding table. Eva froze. "Before we continue, tell us what country you're watching from and your local time. And if stories about people the world often overlooks mean something to you, consider subscribing." 3 weeks earlier, Eva Butler still had a key to a front door she could call her own. The apartment sat on the 2nd floor of an aging brick building on Milwaukee's south side, above a corner grocery that opened before sunrise. The radiator clanked whenever the temperature dropped. One kitchen cabinet refused to close unless Eva lifted it first, and the bathroom window had been painted shut years ago. Still, it was home. At 6:10 every morning, Eva woke before Noah made coffee and packed his lunch while the local news murmured from an old television. She cut sandwiches diagonally because Noah insisted they tasted better that way. By 7:15 she was dressed for work. For 7 years, Eva had worked at the Lakefront Inn, eventually becoming housekeeping supervisor. She managed 23 employees, inspected rooms, handled supply orders, and somehow remembered whose child had a dentist appointment and who needed Thursday afternoon off. Eva had a peculiar habit during inspections. She would kneel beside the bed and look around the room from the height of a child. Her employees used to tease her about it. "You planning on shrinking someday, Eva?" She would smile. "No, I'm checking what everybody else misses." From that height, she had found pills beneath nightstands, broken glass, near curtains, loose electrical covers, and once a sewing needle buried in carpet. Small things mattered to Eva. Maybe because her life had always been built from small things. $5 saved here, an extra shift there, a repaired shoe instead of a new pair, a dinner stretched into tomorrow's lunch. Then, on a gray Monday morning, Lakefront Inn gathered its staff in the ballroom. The hotel had been sold. The new ownership group was restructuring operations. Eva knew what the phrase meant before the manager finished speaking. 29 positions were eliminated. Hers was one of them. She received 7 years of service in a cardboard box and a severance check that looked larger until she calculated rent, utilities, groceries, and the overdue repair on her 2004 Buick. One coworker cried in the hallway. Eva hugged her. Then she carried her own box to the parking lot. She waited until she was inside the Buick before allowing herself 30 seconds with both hands gripping the steering wheel. 30 seconds. Then she started the engine. The next morning, Eva was awake at 5:50. She treated unemployment like a job. Applications before breakfast. Phone calls after taking Noah to school. Temporary shifts whenever she could get them. She found cafeteria work through a staffing agency, but the hours changed constantly, and the pay was considerably less than what she had earned at the hotel. She kept everything inside a transparent plastic envelope: resumes, bills, bus schedules, receipts, interview notes, and whatever cash remained. On the backs of grocery receipts, she did arithmetic. $42, $60 for food, $18 for gas, $11.73 for cold medicine when Noah developed a cough. Every dollar had somewhere it needed to be. One Saturday, they stopped at a discount store for detergent. Noah spotted the socks. Bright blue with tiny silver rockets climbing toward yellow stars. "Those are cool," he said. Then he saw Eva checking the price and immediately put them back. "It's okay, mine still fit." That hurt more than if he had begged. Eva picked them up again. $3.49, Danya. She studied the package as though it were a financial decision requiring board approval. Then she dropped it into the basket. Noah grinned. "You sure everybody needs rocket socks?" That evening he wore them around the apartment, sliding across the kitchen floor until Eva threatened to charge him for damages. For a little while, they laughed. 2 days later, Noah came home from school upset because one of his gloves was missing. I looked everywhere. Eva was stirring canned tomato soup on the stove. "Did you check your backpack 3 times? Lost and found, yes." His shoulders fell. Eva tapped the spoon against the pot. "Lost doesn't always mean gone." Noah frowned. "That doesn't make sense. It will when somebody finds your glove tomorrow. And if they don't, then we keep looking." The glove appeared the next afternoon behind a classroom bookshelf. Noah came home waving it like proof his mother possessed supernatural powers. But there were other things Eva could not recover so easily. The Buick began shuddering when shifting gears. The electric bill arrived with a red notice. Her landlord called twice about the rent balance. Eva picked up every cafeteria shift offered to her. Some nights she returned home after Noah had already eaten dinner with their downstairs neighbor. She hated those nights. Not because she was tired, because she was working harder and falling further behind anyway. One Thursday, Eva sat at the kitchen table after midnight. The apartment was silent except for the refrigerator motor. She emptied the plastic envelope. Bills spread across the table. She calculated once, then again. The numbers did not improve. From the bedroom, Noah coughed. Eva gathered everything quickly and went to check him. His blue rocket socks stuck out from beneath the blanket. She pulled the blanket over his feet and stood there for several seconds. "I'm working on it," she whispered. Noah slept through the promise. The following afternoon, Eva returned from a cafeteria shift, carrying a bag with 2 bruised apples an employee had been allowed to take home. Something white lay on the hallway floor beneath her door. An envelope. Her landlord's company name was printed in the corner. Eva stopped before picking it up. She already knew. Inside, Noah was explaining to one of his action figures that rockets needed enough fuel to escape gravity. Eva quietly closed the door behind herself. She waited until Noah was asleep that night before opening the envelope at the kitchen table. The language was formal. The meaning was not. Her remaining time in the apartment was measured in days. Eva looked toward Noah's bedroom, then at the plastic envelope beside her. For the first time since losing her job, she wasn't trying to calculate how to catch up. She was calculating where an 8-year-old boy could sleep when his mother no longer had a front door to unlock. Eva spent the next morning asking strangers for time. Not money, time. She called the property management office at 8:03 a.m., standing outside Noah's school so he would not hear her. She explained that she had temporary employment, that she was interviewing for permanent positions, and that she could make a partial payment by Friday. The woman on the phone sounded tired rather than cruel. "I'm sorry, Ms. Butler. The notice has already been processed. What if I pay half? I can't promise it will stop anything." Eva stared at the wet pavement. "How many days do I—" The answer was shorter than she hoped. She thanked the woman anyway. That afternoon, Eva began packing while Noah was at school. She started with the things nobody needed. The old television sold for $40. The coffee maker brought 8. A small kitchen table went to a young couple for $25, though Eva had asked $30. She watched them carry it down the stairs, and remembered Noah learning to write his name at that table. She almost called after them. Instead, she closed the door. Everything became a question. Keep, sell, store, carry, leave. Noah's school books went into the keep pile. So did his action figures, though Eva limited him to 3. His drawings went into a manila folder. Her own things were easier. Eva discovered that desperation made sentimentality expensive. By evening, most of her life fit inside 2 suitcases, 3 boxes, and Noah's backpack. When Noah came home, he stopped in the doorway. "Why's the TV gone?" Eva forced brightness into her voice. "We're changing things up. Changing what a lot, apparently." He looked around. Children noticed empty spaces faster than adults did. "Are we moving?" Eva crouched so they were eye to eye. "For a little while, we're going to have an adventure." "What kind?" "The kind where your mom figures things out as she goes." Noah studied her face. Then he nodded. That simple answer nearly broke her. The next problem was finding somewhere to go. Eva called a family shelter. Full. She called another. A recorded message redirected her to a county intake number. She waited 27 minutes on hold. The woman who eventually answered gave her 3 possibilities. The first had no family beds. The second required intake across town. The third might have space, but check-in ended at 5:00 p.m. Eva looked at the cafeteria schedule taped to her refrigerator. Her shift ended at 5:30. If I arrive at 6, I'm sorry. The doors close for intake at 5. Eva closed her eyes. If I leave work early, I might lose the assignment. There was silence on the line. I understand. No solution followed. That was something Eva was beginning to learn. Sometimes people genuinely understood and still could not help. The next day she went to work. She could not afford to lose the one income she had. For their first night out of the apartment, Eva booked a motel room near the interstate. The sign advertised $54.99. After taxes and fees, the room cost nearly $70. Still, when Noah jumped onto the bed and announced that the motel had the biggest ice machine in Wisconsin, Eva laughed. They ate microwave macaroni and cheese. Noah watched cartoons. Eva sat beside the bathroom sink, counting cash. The plastic envelope felt thinner. Before bed, Noah carefully placed his blue rocket socks beside his shoes. You don't want them washed. They're lucky. Eva smiled. Since when? Since my glove came back. The next morning, Eva packed everything again. She called shelters during her break. Nothing. She checked the motel rate for another night. It had jumped above $90 because of a convention downtown. Eva stared at the number on her phone. $90 could be groceries, bus fare, a phone bill, part of a deposit. She could not spend it on 8 hours behind a locked door. Then the Buick failed. Eva had noticed the transmission slipping for weeks, but that afternoon the car lurched violently at an intersection and refused to shift properly. She managed to crawl into a repair shop parking lot. The mechanic drove it around the block. When he returned, his expression told her everything. How bad he named a figure that might as well have been $10,000. Eva gave a small laugh. The mechanic misunderstood. I'm serious, I know. She looked at the Buick. It had taken Noah home from the hospital. It had carried groceries, birthday balloons, laundry baskets, and 7 years of early shifts. Now it was another thing she could not afford to keep. Eva removed their belongings from the trunk. 1 suitcase, 1 duffel bag, Noah's backpack, the plastic envelope. They walked to the bus stop. That evening, Noah asked the question Eva had been dreading. Mom. Yeah, when does the adventure end? Eva looked at him. He was wearing his winter coat inside the bus station. Soon. You said that yesterday. I know. Do we have a house? There it was. No accusation, no tears, just the truth waiting for an answer. Eva sat beside him. We don't have our apartment anymore. Noah stared at his sneakers. Did we do something bad? Eva's chest tightened. No, absolutely not. Then why did they take it? She searched for an explanation an 8-year-old could carry, because sometimes bills keep coming even when work doesn't. Noah thought about that. Then he leaned against her shoulder. Can we stay together? Eva wrapped an arm around him, always. It was the only promise she could make without lying. Hours later, they were riding one of the last buses of the night. Noah slept against the window, his backpack clutched to his chest. Eva watched Milwaukee pass in fragments. Closed restaurants, gas stations, dark office buildings, a church parking lot. She had 6342 left. Her phone battery showed 11%. The temperature outside was falling. Eva had spent the evening thinking in terms of hours. How long could they remain somewhere warm? When did the next bus arrive? How long before someone asked them to leave? Then through the fogged window she saw it. A red brick building on a corner. Below several dark apartment windows, fluorescent light poured onto the sidewalk. A sign glowed above the storefront. Riverside Laundry, open 24 hours. Eva stared at it until the bus began passing. Then she reached for the stop cord. The bell sounded. Noah stirred. Are we there? Eva looked at the laundromat receding behind them. For tonight, she said. They stepped off in the next stop and walked back through the cold. When Eva opened the glass door, warmth rolled over them with the smell of detergent and dryer sheets. Machines turned behind rows of circular windows. Noah looked up at her. Are we doing laundry? Eva tightened her hand around the plastic envelope. She had no idea what they were doing, but she knew one thing. Her son was cold, and for the moment this place was warm. Yeah, Eva said softly. We're doing laundry. Above them, a small security camera watched the door. The first thing Eva noticed about Riverside Laundry was the heat. Not the comforting kind that came from a kitchen oven or a radiator beside a familiar bed. This heat smelled of detergent, warm cotton, and metal. It pressed against the cold trapped inside her coat and slowly returned feeling to her fingers. Noah stood just inside the door staring at the rows of machines. Which one's ours? Eva looked down at the duffel bag. Most of their clothes were clean. It didn't matter. That one? She chose a washer near the back, where they would be less noticeable. The machine cost $4.75. Eva opened the plastic envelope. She had $63.42. $4.75 suddenly felt enormous. She could have sat inside without washing anything. The laundromat was open 24 hours. No employee stood behind the counter. Nobody was checking receipts. But Eva couldn't do it. Needing warmth did not make the place hers. She fed the machine. $1, $2, $3, $4. Then the final coins. Noah helped load the clothes. You put my red shirt with the dark stuff. Yes, last time it made my white shirt pink. That was one time, it's still pink. Eva gave him a look. Noah smiled. For a moment they were simply a mother and son doing laundry. That illusion mattered. They took a folding table near the dryers. Noah opened his backpack and pulled out his math worksheet. Eva placed dinner between them. Peanut butter crackers. 1 bottle of chocolate milk. Noah looked at the bottle. You drink first. You drink first. You're the grown-up. Exactly. Which means I make the rules. She took a deliberately tiny sip and handed it over. Noah drank, then pushed it back. They continued until the bottle was empty. Around them, strangers came and went. A nurse in blue scrubs folded towels while talking on her phone. A young man slept against a dryer while his clothes spun. A father chased a toddler between the machines. Nobody paid much attention to Eva. She was grateful for that. At 11:18, the washer stopped. Eva moved their clothes into a dryer. Noah insisted on helping. He loved pulling warm clothes from machines, burying his hands in them as though searching for treasure. When the dryer finished, they began folding. 2 shirts, 3 pairs of jeans, underwear, sweatshirts. Eva picked up 1 small blue sock covered with silver rockets. She waited for the second. It wasn't there. Noah. He looked over. Where's the other rocket sock? His expression changed immediately. I put both in. Check the duffel. He did. Nothing. They searched beneath the folding table, inside the washer, around the dryer. Noah dropped to his knees and looked under the machines. Careful. It has to be here. Eva checked inside trouser legs and sweatshirt sleeves. Nothing. Noah searched again. Eventually, Eva saw his eyes beginning to shine. Honey, it's just a sock. I know, we'll find it. He shook his head. You don't know that. Eva stopped. His voice wasn't angry. It was frightened. I had them at our apartment. Eva understood. The sock wasn't worth anything. That was precisely why it mattered. Almost everything Noah associated with home had disappeared within days. His bedroom, the kitchen table, the television, their car. The socks were something small that had survived. Eva crouched beside him. "Hey." Noah wiped his face quickly. "I'm not crying about a sock. I didn't say you were." He looked toward the machines. Eva held up the remaining blue sock. "Remember your glove?" That was different. Was it, "You knew it would come back"? "No, I didn't." Noah looked at her. Eva smiled gently. "Lost doesn't always mean gone." He exhaled. "Sometimes it does." "Sometimes." She folded the single sock carefully and placed it in his backpack. "But we don't stop looking just because we can't see something right now." By 12:30, only 2 customers remained. At 12:56, 1 left. At 1:14, the last customer collected a basket and walked out. The door closed. Silence settled differently after that. Eva looked at the clock. The first useful morning bus was still hours away. Noah had begun nodding off at the folding table. She checked her phone. 9%. She could make him walk outside and wait somewhere else. But outside, the temperature had dropped below freezing. Eva looked around. No employee. No security guard. Only machines humming beneath fluorescent lights. 1 hour, she whispered. Noah barely heard. What you can sleep for 1 hour. Where? Eva arranged 3 plastic chairs beside one another. There. That looks uncomfortable. It's the Riverside presidential suite. Noah smiled sleepily. Does it have room service? Absolutely not. She removed her coat, folded it, and placed it beneath his head. Noah lay down. His knees bent because the chairs were too short. Eva draped his sweatshirt over him. Within minutes, he was asleep. She sat beside him. 1 hour. That was all. At 2:20, Eva was still awake. At 3:07, she checked the door after hearing footsteps outside. At 4:11, she realized she had dozed for perhaps 15 minutes sitting upright. Noah slept through everything. Eva couldn't wake him, not yet. So she watched the clock. At 5:22, she touched his shoulder. "Baby." Noah opened his eyes. School not yet. He slowly remembered where they were. That hurt Eva more than confusion would have. They packed quickly. But before leaving, Eva stopped. She looked at the chairs. A cracker wrapper had fallen beneath one. She picked it up. Then she wiped the table with a damp paper towel. She returned 2 laundry carts to their places. Near a dryer, she spotted 3 used dryer sheets on the floor. Not theirs. Eva picked those up too. Noah watched. "We didn't make that mess." "I know." "Then why are you cleaning it?" Eva pushed the final cart into line. "Because somebody has to." At 5:40 a.m., they stepped outside. The cold swallowed them immediately. Noah took Eva's hand. Behind them, Riverside Laundry continued glowing. Neither of them looked toward the small black camera mounted above the back wall. They didn't know it had recorded the 3 chairs, the folded coat, the cleaning, or the moment Eva had spent nearly $5 she could barely afford simply because she believed that if she used someone else's space, she should give something back. And somewhere else in Milwaukee, those images were waiting for the man who owned the building to press play. Walter Bennett did not look like a man who owned 6 apartments, a laundromat, and 3 other small commercial properties across Milwaukee. Most mornings he looked like the person those owners called when something broke. At 58, Walter still kept a toolbox in the back of his dark Ford pickup. His hands carried old electrical scars, and his winter boots were permanently marked with dust from basements, boiler rooms, and renovation sites. He had started as an electrician at 19. He bought his first duplex at 31, repaired almost everything himself, rented the upstairs unit, and lived downstairs. Years later came another building, then another. Riverside had been different. Walter bought the aging red brick property 12 years earlier when half the dryers were broken and 2 upstairs apartments had water damage. Denise, his wife, had stood beside him on the sidewalk the day he signed the papers. "You see problems," Walter had told her. Denise smiled. "You see wires and pipes. I see people." She had been right about him. Walter understood buildings better than people. Buildings were honest. A leaking pipe left water. A failing bearing made noise. A bad circuit tripped a breaker. People could tell you they were fine while falling apart in front of you. Denise had understood that language. Walter never had. After she died, from the sudden stroke 4 years earlier, the quiet inside his house became something he simply learned to live around. His daughter Lauren tried for a while. She called every Sunday, then every other Sunday. Eventually, their conversations became arguments. Lauren said Walter always tried to fix things instead of listening. Walter thought that was ridiculous. If something was wrong, why wouldn't you fix it? Their last conversation had ended with Lauren saying, "Dad, sometimes I need you to hear me before you solve me." Walter had not called her back. 3 weeks later, his phone rang while he was checking invoices at his office. It was Curtis Hale, who rented apartment 3B above Riverside. "You know somebody's sleeping downstairs." Walter stopped writing. "What in the laundromat?" "Who woman? Kid. Saw them coming out early yesterday. Suitcase too." Walter leaned back. "You sure they were sleeping there? I'm sure enough that I don't want the place turning into a shelter." Walter's jaw tightened. "I'll handle it." He ended the call. For several seconds he stared at the security monitor mounted on the wall. Riverside had 4 cameras. One covered the entrance, one covered the machines, one faced the payment station, the last watched the rear hallway. Walter pulled up the previous night's footage. He fast-forwarded. Customers blurred across the screen. 11:18 p.m., 12:03 a.m., 12:56. Then he saw them. A woman in a dark sweater, a boy. Walter slowed the footage. The woman washed clothes, paid normally, folded everything. Nothing unusual. Then the customers disappeared. At 1:23 a.m., the woman pushed 3 plastic chairs together. Walter frowned. The boy lay down. "There it is," he muttered. He reached for his phone. Sleeping inside violated building policy. More importantly, it created a liability problem. If the child got hurt, if someone attacked them, if there was a fire. Walter stopped. On screen, the woman removed her coat. She folded it beneath the boy's head. Then she sat beside him. Walter watched several minutes at higher speed. The woman did not lie down. She checked the entrance repeatedly. At one point, she walked to the window, looked outside, then returned to the child. Walter lowered his phone. He continued watching. Around 5:20, she woke the boy. They packed. Walter expected them to leave. Instead, the woman began cleaning. She wiped the table, straightened chairs, returned laundry carts. Then she bent near dryer 12 and picked something off the floor. Walter zoomed in. Dryer sheets. He knew because his cleaning crew had complained about them for years. She picked up 3. The woman threw them away, took the boy's hand, and left. Walter sat back. He did not know why that bothered him. Or perhaps he did. People who believed nobody was watching usually revealed something about themselves. Walter had spent decades dealing with tenants, contractors, customers, and employees. He had seen people leave trash beside an empty garbage can because they assumed someone else would handle it. This woman had cleaned a mess she had not made. Still, rules were rules. Walter opened a blank notice on his computer. No overnight sleeping. He stared at it, then closed the document. "I'll check tonight," he told. That afternoon, he drove to Riverside. He did not mention the woman to anyone. He checked the rear door, inspected 2 dryers, collected maintenance slips, and replaced a flickering light near the restroom. Before leaving, he looked at the 3 plastic chairs. They were ordinary chairs. Gray, scratched. One had a small crack near the back. Walter stood there longer than necessary. At 9:40 that night, he checked the cameras from home. No woman. At 10:30, he checked again. Nothing. At 11:07, Walter told himself he was being ridiculous. He made tea. The house felt especially quiet. A framed photograph of Denise stood on the kitchen shelf. In it, she was laughing at something outside the frame. Walter looked away. At 11:36, his tablet sent a motion notification from Riverside's entrance camera. He opened it. The woman stepped inside. The boy followed. Walter leaned closer. This time he noticed their luggage immediately. A small suitcase, a duffel bag, the boy's backpack. The woman stopped just inside the door and counted money from a transparent plastic envelope. Walter watched her feed coins into a washer. Again. She was paying to wash clothes that from the small load hardly seemed to need washing. The boy sat at a folding table and opened a school book. Walter turned up the volume, but the cameras recorded no sound. He watched the woman point at something on the page. The boy erased an answer. She pointed again. He wrote. For nearly 20 minutes, Walter forgot he was watching people who were technically breaking his rules. He saw a mother helping her son with homework. At 12:42, she folded the laundry. At 1:09, the last customer left. Walter knew what would happen next. The woman waited. 10 minutes. 20. Then she pushed the same 3 chairs together. The boy climbed onto them. Walter's hand rested beside his phone. One call could end it. He could send security. He could drive there himself. He could make the problem disappear from his building. Instead, Walter watched the woman tuck her coat beneath her son's head. Something moved behind his expression. A memory. Not clear enough to become an image yet. Just fluorescent lights. The turning circle of a dryer. A woman's tired hands. Walter abruptly closed the camera feed. No, he whispered. He stood and walked toward the kitchen. But 2 minutes later he returned. He opened the footage again. The woman was sitting upright beside the sleeping boy guarding him. Walter looked at the clock. 1:43 a.m. Then at the screen. For the second night in a row, Eva Butler had entered his building. Walter still did not know her name, but he was beginning to understand that whatever had brought her there was more complicated than trespassing. And for the first time in years, Walter Bennett chose not to solve a problem immediately. He chose to watch. By the 4th night, Eva had rules. She had not written them down, but she carried them with the same seriousness she once brought to housekeeping inspections at Lakefront Inn. Never take more than 3 chairs. Never spread their belongings across a folding table if someone else needed it. Never let Noah lie down while customers were still inside. Always pay for a wash. Always clean before leaving. And above all, be gone before Riverside became busy in the morning. Rules could not give Noah a bedroom, but they gave Eva something she desperately needed. Order. At 5:35, each morning she woke him, gently packed their things, and caught the bus toward a community center where they could wash properly and change clothes before school. Then Eva went to work. Her temporary cafeteria shifts began at 7:30. She wore a borrowed uniform and spent hours carrying trays, wiping counters, restocking plastic utensils, and smiling at people who rarely looked at her name tag. She did not resent them. She simply noticed how easy it was to become invisible while wearing a uniform. During lunch breaks, Eva searched job listings on her phone. One Tuesday, she received an interview for an assistant housekeeping manager position at a retirement community. The interview went well. The supervisor seemed impressed by her 7 years at Lakefront Inn. You managed 23 people, 23 on the full roster, usually 15 to 18 per shift. And inventory linens, chemicals, room supplies, monthly counts. The supervisor smiled. You sound organized. I have to be. Then came the application form. Current address. Eva hesitated. She had used the old apartment address on several applications, but mail could no longer reach her there. I'm between residences right now. The supervisor's expression changed only slightly. Eva noticed anyway. Do you have a permanent mailing address? Not currently. A pause. We'll be in touch. Eva knew before leaving that they probably wouldn't. Outside, she sat at a bus stop and checked her phone. 3% battery. She had another application to submit before 5. She switched the phone off. There were days when homelessness did not look dramatic. It looked like nowhere to charge a phone, nowhere to receive mail, nowhere to leave a suitcase during an interview. It looked like carrying your entire private life into public places and pretending it was ordinary. Noah had stopped asking when the adventure would end. That frightened Eva. One evening, as they walked toward Riverside, he asked instead, "Are we washing tonight?" Eva looked at him. "Yeah. Okay. Nothing else. No questions about where they would sleep. No questions about home." An 8-year-old had already learned which questions hurt his mother. Eva wished he hadn't. That night, Riverside had only one customer when they arrived. She was an older black woman wearing a plum-colored coat and pushing a laundry cart piled with sheets. Eva had seen her before. The woman nodded. "Cold one." "Yes, ma'am, Gloria, Eva." Gloria looked toward Noah. "And who's the gentleman, Noah?" Noah glanced up from his workbook. "Hi. Very serious-looking homework you've got there. Fractions." Gloria grimaced theatrically. My condolences." Noah laughed. That was how Gloria Mitchell entered their lives. She did not ask why Eva had a suitcase. She did not ask why Noah did homework at midnight. She did not ask why they were still there when her dryers finished. She simply noticed. 2 nights later, Gloria returned. She placed her detergent on a washer, then pulled a banana and a small apple juice from her bag. "Oh, goodness." Eva looked over. Gloria sighed dramatically. "I bought too much again." She set them near Noah. "I hate wasting food." Noah looked at Eva before touching either. Eva understood immediately. So did Gloria. Pride could turn kindness into humiliation if handled carelessly. Eva nodded. "Well, Noah's very committed to preventing food waste." "I am," Noah said. Gloria smiled. "Community service." Noah peeled the banana. 20 minutes later, Gloria struggled to fold a fitted sheet. Eva watched her wrestle with the elastic corners. "May I?" Gloria surrendered it. "If you can fold that thing, you deserve a medal." Eva snapped the sheet open. "Housekeeping supervisor, 7 years." Within seconds, she had it folded into a clean rectangle. Gloria stared. "Now you're just showing off." Eva laughed. She helped fold the remaining sheets. Nothing was owed. Nothing was counted. A banana moved one direction. A little skill moved the other. Across the city, Walter Bennett watched part of the exchange through his security feed. He had begun checking Riverside more often than he wanted to admit. He still did not know Eva's story, but he had learned her patterns. She always paid. She always waited until the laundromat emptied before arranging the chairs. She cleaned every morning. Once Walter watched Noah accidentally drop a quarter beneath a vending machine. Eva could easily have told him to leave it. Instead, she knelt for several minutes and retrieved it. That quarter mattered. Walter understood that much. At 1:16 a.m., Gloria finally loaded her folded sheets into her cart. Before leaving, she stopped beside Eva. "You two be careful tonight." Eva held her gaze. There was no judgment in Gloria's face, only recognition. "We will." After the door closed, Noah finished his juice. "She knows." Eva looked at him. "Knows what? That we sleep here." Eva's hands became still. Noah stared at the empty juice box. "I know too, Mom." For a moment, Eva could not speak. She sat beside him. "I'm sorry." Noah frowned. For what? For this. He looked around Riverside. You didn't make the hotel close." "No." "You didn't break the car." "No." "So why are you sorry?" Eva had no answer an 8-year-old should have needed to give her. Noah leaned against her arm. "We're still together." Eva kissed the top of his head. "Always?" Later, after Noah fell asleep across the 3 chairs, Eva remained beside him. At 1:52 a.m., Walter watched her through the camera. He saw her count money from the transparent envelope. He saw her separate bus fare for morning. He saw her return the remaining bills carefully. Then Eva looked toward Noah and pulled her sweater tighter around herself. Walter's cursor hovered over the phone number for his overnight security contractor. He could enforce the rule tonight. Instead, he closed the contact. On screen, Eva suddenly lifted her head. Her expression changed. She sniffed the air. Once, then again. Walter leaned toward the monitor. Eva stood. She walked slowly past the washers toward the back row of dryers. Near dryer 14, she stopped. A faint flicker appeared behind the metal vent. Eva immediately turned toward Noah. And this time Walter did not look away. Eva smelled it before she saw anything. Burning plastic. Not smoke exactly. Not yet. Just the sharp chemical odor of something becoming hotter than it was designed to become. At Lakefront Inn, she had learned never to dismiss unusual smells. A wet electrical outlet once smelled like fish. An overheating vacuum had smelled like melted crayons. A loose wire behind a guest room lamp had produced nothing more dramatic than a faint metallic scent before maintenance discovered the insulation turning black. Eva walked toward the rear dryers. Mom Noah lifted his head from the chairs. "Stay there." The laundromat was empty. Outside, the temperature had fallen into the 20s, and a thin crust of ice was beginning to form along the curb. Inside, 30 machines hummed beneath fluorescent lights. Eva moved slowly. Dryer 11, nothing, 12, normal, 13, then 14. She stopped. The machine was no longer running, but its rear panel was unusually hot. Eva held her palm near the metal without touching it. Heat radiated against her skin. Then came a sound. Tick, tick. A tiny blue-white flicker appeared for half a second through a ventilation opening. Eva's stomach tightened. "Noah, put your shoes on." He sat upright immediately. "Why now, baby?" Something in her voice ended the questions. Noah pulled on his sneakers. Eva searched the wall. At Lakefront Inn, every employee had received basic emergency training. Eva had never imagined she would use any of it, while technically trespassing in a laundromat at nearly 2 in the morning. She found the electrical panel near the maintenance closet. A laminated diagram listed machine numbers beside breaker positions. 14, she whispered. Her finger moved down the labels. There. Eva switched off the breaker. The hum from that section stopped. She waited. No flames, no smoke, but the smell remained. Eva returned to the dryer. She found a maintenance number printed on a sticker beside the coin machine and called. It rang 6 times. Voicemail. "This is Eva. I'm at Riverside Laundry. Dryer 14 may have an electrical problem. I shut off the breaker because the rear panel is extremely hot, and I saw what looked like arcing behind the vent. Please don't turn it back on until someone checks it." She stopped. For a second, she wondered whether to leave her number. Then she did. If someone needed information, they should be able to reach her. She ended the call. Noah stood beside the chairs wearing his backpack. "Are we leaving?" "Maybe." "Is there a fire?" "Not if we did this right." Eva found a marker near the lost and found shelf and tore a clean piece of cardboard from an empty detergent box. "Do not use electrical problem." She taped it across the dryer door. Then she pushed a laundry cart in front of the machine. "Why are you doing that?" "In case somebody doesn't read." Noah considered this. That happens a lot at school. Exactly. Across Milwaukee, Walter Bennett was awake. His phone had vibrated on the nightstand at 1:56. Electrical system alert, Riverside. Walter sat up instantly. Years as an electrician had trained his body to react to those words before his mind fully woke. He opened the building monitoring application. One circuit had been manually shut down. Dryer 14. Walter reached for his trousers. Then he remembered the cameras. He opened the security feed. Eva was standing in front of dryer 14. Walter rewound several minutes. He watched her smell the air, watched her inspect the machines, watched her move Noah away, watched her find the electrical panel. Walter replayed that part. She shut it off. His phone buzzed again. A voicemail notification from the laundromat maintenance line. Walter played it. Eva's voice came through clearly. "This is Eva. I'm at Riverside Laundry." Walter paused the recording. Eva. Now he had a name. He played the rest. When the message ended, he stared at the screen. He could drive there, but the circuit was off, and Eva had already done exactly what he would have done first. Walter called his electrician, Marcus, and left a message asking him to meet at Riverside at 6:30. Then he continued watching. Eva did not return to sleep. She sat with Noah until the smell faded. At 5:30, they packed. Before leaving, Eva checked dryer 14 again. The warning remained in place. At 6:28, Walter arrived. Marcus pulled the dryer away from the wall and removed the rear panel. His expression changed. "Well, there's your problem." A wire feeding the heating assembly had partially separated from its terminal. The connection had been arcing, burning through the insulation around it. Walter crouched beside him. How close? Marcus pointed to the blackened section. "Close enough." "To what a fire?" Walter looked at him. Marcus shrugged. If somebody had loaded another 40-minute cycle, heat keeps building insulation catches, lint goes next. Hard to say exactly. But whoever shut this thing down did you a favor? Walter stood. On the floor behind the dryer were several old coins, lint, a plastic button, and something blue. Walter bent down. A child's sock. Tiny silver rockets covered the fabric. He picked it up. For some reason, he remembered seeing Noah searching beneath the machines days earlier. Walter folded the sock once and placed it in his coat pocket. Then he walked to the office. He opened the security footage again. There was Eva pulling the breaker. There was Eva writing the warning. There was Eva moving the cart in front of the machine. A woman who did not have a home had protected his building as though it were hers. Walter thought of the complaint waiting in his email. Homeless people. Liability. Remove them. Those words now felt too simple. He looked around Riverside. 6 apartments sat directly above the laundromat. Families slept there. A retired teacher lived in 2A. A couple with a newborn lived in 3C. Had the fire spread, Walter stopped himself. At 9:14 that morning, he called the number Eva had left. It went straight to voicemail. He did not leave a message. Not yet. Instead, Walter reached into his coat and removed the blue rocket sock. He placed it on his desk. For the rest of the day, whenever he looked at it, he thought about something Denise used to tell him. People show you who they are when they think nobody important is watching. Walter had always believed that. But now, another thought troubled him. Maybe the real question was who society decided was important enough to watch in the first place. That evening, another complaint about Eva arrived. This time, Walter could no longer postpone making a decision. The second complaint arrived at 4:17 that afternoon. Walter was in his office reviewing a plumbing estimate when his phone vibrated. Curtis Hale from apartment 3B had sent a photograph. It showed Eva's small suitcase tucked beneath one of Riverside's folding tables. The message beneath it was longer. "Walter, this is what I was talking about. They're staying there every night. I have nothing against people having problems, but we pay rent to live in a safe building. If you allow this, what happens when more people start sleeping downstairs?" Walter read it twice. He disliked the wording, but he could not dismiss the concern. 6 apartments sat above Riverside. Tenants had leases. The laundromat had insurance requirements. It was a commercial space, not a residence. If Noah fell from the chairs and cracked his head, Walter could be liable. If someone entered at 300 a.m. and attacked, Walter could be liable. If there were a fire... Walter glanced toward the blue rocket sock resting on his desk. That possibility no longer felt theoretical. He called his insurance agent without mentioning Eva by name. What happens if someone sleeps overnight in a 24-hour commercial laundry? The answer came quickly. Don't allow it. What if they're customers? Customers use the premises. They don't reside there. It's a mother and kid. A pause. That makes the liability worse, Walter. He thanked the agent and ended the call. For several minutes, Walter stared at his computer. Then he opened a blank document. Notice to all customers, for safety and insurance reasons, sleeping or remaining on the premises for purposes unrelated to laundry service is prohibited. He read it. Clear, professional, reasonable. He printed 2 copies. Walter placed one inside a plastic sleeve and carried it to his truck. By 9:30 p.m., snow had begun falling. Not heavily. Just enough to soften the sidewalks and collect along windshield edges. Walter drove toward Riverside with the notice on the passenger seat. He told himself this was not personal. Eva had protected the building. He was grateful. But gratitude did not change regulations. He could thank her and still enforce the rules. That was what responsible owners did. At 9:52, Walter parked across the street. Riverside's fluorescent light spilled across the sidewalk. He reached for the notice, then stopped. Eva and Noah were visible through the glass. Walter remained inside the truck. Noah sat at a folding table with a workbook open. His lips moved as he read something aloud. Eva stood beside a dryer. She was holding a white blouse. Walter watched her remove it while it was still warm. Shake it and smooth it carefully across the folding table. She pressed both palms along the fabric. Then she held it up, wrinkled. Eva frowned. She returned it to the dryer for several minutes with a damp washcloth. Walter recognized what she was doing. No iron, no ironing board. She was using steam and heat to prepare the blouse. For what? Then Walter saw a folder beside her plastic envelope. A resume was visible through the top. Interview. He leaned back. Noah abandoned his workbook and joined her. He took one sleeve. Eva took the other. Together they pulled the blouse gently across the table. Noah inspected it with exaggerated seriousness. Eva pointed at the collar. He smoothed it. She laughed. Even through the glass, Walter could see it. For a few seconds, the laundromat did not look like a place where a homeless mother was violating a rule. It looked like a kitchen table before an important morning. Walter's hand tightened around the notice. And then something happened inside him. Not a thought, a memory, fluorescent light, round dryer windows turning in darkness, a winter coat folded beneath a child's head. Walter blinked. He was no longer looking at Noah. For half a second he saw himself, 11 years old, thin, cold, trying not to ask his mother when they were going home, because he had already understood there was no home to return to. Walter looked away. No. The word escaped quietly. He had spent decades refusing to revisit that winter. He remembered the important parts, he told himself. His mother worked, he worked. They survived. Everything else belonged to another life. But through Riverside's window, the past had suddenly acquired details. His mother, Evelyn, warming his socks against a dryer door. The paper bag containing their belongings. Her telling him they were waiting for someone because she could not bring herself to say they had nowhere to sleep. Walter stared at the notice. A perfectly reasonable piece of paper. A perfectly reasonable rule. Inside, Noah held up the blouse. Eva pretended to inspect his work. Then she gave him a thumbs up. Noah bowed dramatically. Walter almost smiled. His phone rang. Lauren. Walter looked at his daughter's name. He hesitated, then answered. Hey. Dad. Something in her voice was strained. What happened? Nothing happened. I just wanted to talk. What's wrong? See that? What I call, and you immediately assume there's a problem to solve. Walter glanced through the windshield. I'm listening. No, you're diagnosing. Normally he would have defended himself. Instead, he watched Eva fold the interview blouse. What if I don't know the difference? Lauren became quiet. Walter surprised himself with the question. Finally, she said, Then maybe start by not doing anything for a minute. Walter looked down at the notice. Not doing anything had always felt irresponsible to him. Problems grew when ignored. Pipes burst. Bills accumulated. People got hurt. But perhaps waiting long enough to understand something was not the same as ignoring it. "I'll call you tomorrow," Walter said. "Will you?" "Yes." "Okay." After the call, Walter stepped from his truck. Snow landed on his shoulders. He crossed the street carrying the notice. He stopped outside Riverside. Eva did not see him. Her back was turned. Noah had returned to his homework. Walter could enter. Thank Eva for preventing the electrical fire. Tell her sleeping there had to stop. Hand her the notice. Simple. Instead, another memory surfaced. A man behind a laundromat counter. Gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, a ring of keys, and Walter's mother standing before him with the same expression Eva wore whenever she counted the money in her plastic envelope. Not begging, trying to calculate survival. Walter stepped backward. He folded the notice once, then again. He returned to his truck without entering. At home, he did not turn on the television. He went directly to the small office beside his bedroom and opened an old metal filing cabinet. Behind tax records and property documents was a battered cardboard box marked Evelyn, his mother's things. Walter had not opened it in years. Inside were photographs, letters, an old bus schedule, and a key attached to a faded paper tag. Walter picked it up. The handwriting on the tag was almost gone, but he could still read 2 words. Back room. Walter sat slowly. And suddenly he remembered the man who had given that key to his mother. Arthur Rosen. The laundromat owner Walter had nearly erased from the story of how his family survived. The clock on his desk ticked toward midnight. Walter held the old key in his palm. For the first time in decades, he allowed himself to remember that winter completely. Walter Bennett had spent most of his adult life telling the story incorrectly. Not because he lied, because he had removed one person from it. Whenever someone asked how he had gone from a poor boy in Detroit to owning buildings in Milwaukee, Walter gave the same answer. "My mother worked, I worked, we kept going. All of that was true. It simply wasn't the whole truth." The old key in his palm brought the missing part back. Walter was 11 when his mother Evelyn Bennett woke him before sunrise and told him to put on 2 shirts. "Why? Because it's cold. Where are we going? Somewhere quiet." She packed 1 brown suitcase, nothing else. Walter remembered his father shouting the night before. A plate had broken against the kitchen wall. Evelyn had stood between her husband and her son without raising her voice. By morning, they were gone. Evelyn had $37. No car, no family nearby willing to take them. For several nights, mother and son moved through Detroit, wherever they could remain warm, without attracting attention. A bus station, a hospital waiting room, then a laundromat. Walter remembered the first night clearly now. He had sat beside a dryer watching clothes turn behind round glass. "We doing laundry?" he asked. Evelyn had smiled. "We're waiting. For what?" "A little luck." Walter accepted that because children often accepted whatever explanation allowed them to believe their parents were still in control. After midnight, Evelyn folded her coat beneath his head. Walter lay across several plastic chairs. The resemblance to Noah was so exact that present-day Walter had to close his eyes. He remembered trying to stay awake. If his mother was awake, he wanted to be awake too. But eventually the warmth from the dryers pulled him under. Sometime after 200 a.m., a voice woke him. "You can't sleep here." Evelyn stood immediately. Behind the counter was a thin man in his early 60s with wire-rimmed glasses. Arthur Rosen. Walter remembered being afraid of him. Arthur looked at their suitcase, then at Walter, then at Evelyn. "You been here before?" It wasn't a question. Evelyn said nothing. "How long we'll leave?" I asked how long. Her face tightened. 3 nights. Arthur looked toward the windows. Snow was falling outside. "You have somewhere else?" Evelyn lifted the suitcase. "We'll go." Arthur did something Walter never understood until years later. He did not say, "You poor thing." He did not reach for his wallet. He did not promise everything would be fine. Instead, he asked, "You know how to clean?" Evelyn stared at him. "Yes. Keep records?" "Yes. Count a cash drawer. I worked grocery for 4 years. Arthur pointed toward the floor. "My night cleaner quit Tuesday." Evelyn did not move. "I'm not asking for charity," she said. "Good. I'm not offering it." That sentence stayed with Walter. Arthur showed her the work. Floors, bathrooms, lint traps, trash, closing records. In exchange, Evelyn received wages. Then Arthur opened a narrow door behind the office. The room contained shelves, detergent boxes, a utility sink, and an old cot. "This isn't an apartment," he said. "Insurance would have my head." Evelyn looked inside. "But for a couple of weeks while you figure something out." He placed a key on the counter. The same key Walter now held 47 years later. Evelyn stared at it. "What do I owe you? Show up at 10 tomorrow." That was all. No miracle followed. Evelyn still struggled. She still counted coins. Walter still ate cheap cereal for dinner. But his mother had something she had not possessed the night before. A starting point. Within 6 weeks, Evelyn had saved enough for a deposit on a small apartment. Walter remembered the first night there. No furniture except 2 mattresses. Evelyn locked the front door and leaned against it. Then she laughed. Walter had asked why. "Because this key is ours." Years later, Walter became an electrician. He worked overtime, saved aggressively, bought his first duplex, then another property. Evelyn lived long enough to see Riverside purchased. "You always did like laundromats," she teased. Walter had laughed. He never told her he hated them. They reminded him of cold nights and uncertainty. After Evelyn died, Walter reduced that winter to a cleaner story. His mother had been strong. He had worked hard. They had escaped poverty. Arthur Rosen gradually disappeared from the telling. Perhaps Walter needed to believe independence meant never having needed anyone. Now sitting alone in his Milwaukee office, he understood how foolish that was. Hard work mattered. Evelyn had done the work, but someone had given her a place where the work could begin. Walter looked at the security monitor. Riverside appeared empty on screen. He opened earlier footage. Eva cleaning, Eva helping Noah, Eva shutting off dryer 14. A woman without a home protecting a building she did not own. Walter leaned back. He could pay for a motel. He could hand Eva $1,000. He could feel generous for an evening. But then what money would disappear? The problem beneath it would remain. Arthur had understood something Walter had forgotten. Dignity did not mean refusing help. Sometimes dignity meant being given help in a form that allowed you to remain responsible for your own future. Walter opened Riverside's property files. Apartment 2D, a small studio above the rear office. Vacant. It needed paint, a new faucet, and a smoke detector. Then he opened his staffing records. Walter had been paying different contractors to handle evening inspections, cleaning checks, maintenance reports, and payment machine issues. He stared at the numbers. An idea began forming. Not charity, work. A temporary arrangement with clear terms. A door, not a rescue. Walter drafted notes. Evening building attendant. 90-day trial. Hourly wage. Studio included temporarily as part of compensation. He stopped. Would Eva accept? Maybe not. From what he had seen, she would ask questions. Walter found himself hoping she would. He glanced at the blue rocket sock on his desk. Then at the old key from Arthur's laundromat. 2 small objects from 2 different winters. Walter checked the Riverside camera. Eva and Noah had arrived. She was counting money from the plastic envelope. Walter looked at the clock. 1:47 a.m. He stood. The old key went back into Evelyn's box. The blue rocket sock went into his coat pocket. Walter took his truck keys and walked outside. Snow had started again. As he drove toward Riverside, he thought about Arthur Rosen standing behind that Detroit counter decades earlier. Walter had spent 47 years believing the man had saved them. Now he understood differently. Arthur had not saved Evelyn Bennett. He had simply opened a door. Evelyn had done the walking. At 1:59 a.m., Walter parked outside Riverside Laundry. Through the glass, he saw Noah asleep across 3 plastic chairs. Eva sat beside him, holding her transparent envelope. Walter crossed the sidewalk. At exactly 2:03, he opened the door. The bell rang. Eva looked up, and Walter Bennett finally stepped into the story he had been watching from a screen. At 2:03 a.m., the bell above Riverside Laundry's door rang once. Eva looked up so quickly that several coins slipped from her hand and struck the folding table. Walter Bennett stepped inside. Snow dusted the shoulders of his dark coat. He closed the door behind him and stood there for a moment, taking in the scene without speaking. 3 plastic chairs, a sleeping 8-year-old, a duffel bag tucked beneath the table, a transparent envelope containing 3817. Eva did not wait for him to ask questions. She stood. "Give me 5 minutes." Walter looked at her. "I'll wake my son. We'll clean everything and leave. Ms. Butler, we haven't damaged anything. I know, I've paid every night. I know that too." That stopped her. Eva stared at him. How much did he know Walter turned the lock on the front door? Click. Eva immediately moved between him and Noah. "Why did you lock that? So nobody walks in while we talk. If you called the police, you don't need to lock us in. I didn't call the police." Walter approached the folding table slowly. Eva remained standing. Noah shifted beneath the sweatshirt covering him, but did not wake. Walter reached into his coat. Eva's shoulders tightened. Then he placed something on the table. Blue fabric. Tiny silver rockets. For several seconds, Eva simply stared. Noah's missing sock. What found it behind dryer? 14 this morning. Eva picked it up. It was dusty but intact. The repairman pulled the rear panel. Noah stirred. Mom Eva turned. "Hey, baby." He sat up, rubbing his eyes. Then he saw what she was holding. His face changed instantly. "My sock!" He jumped from the chairs. Walter stepped aside as Noah took it. "You found it?" Walter nodded. Apparently, it was hiding. Noah examined it as though confirming the rockets were all still there. "I told you," Eva said softly. Noah looked at her. She smiled. Lost doesn't always mean gone. For one brief moment, the laundromat at 2 a.m. felt almost normal. Then Noah noticed Walter. His smile faded. "Are we in trouble?" Walter looked at him. "That depends." "On what?" "Whether your mother answers a few questions." Eva touched Noah's shoulder. "Go sit down." He obeyed, still holding the sock. Walter pulled out a chair. Eva remained standing. "How long have you been sleeping here?" She considered lying. There was no point. 6 nights. Why, our apartment is gone." Walter waited. Eva hated that silence. It felt like an invitation to explain herself, and she did not want to perform her suffering for anyone. "I lost my job when the hotel changed ownership," she said. "The temporary work wasn't enough. Then my car died. The shelters I called were full or didn't work with my job hours." Walter nodded. "You worked at a hotel, Lakefront Inn. What did you do? Housekeeping supervisor. How long?" 7 years. Walter glanced toward dryer 14. "You have electrical training. Basic emergency training?" "Nothing professional. You knew enough to shut down the right circuit. I read the panel. You also noticed the smell." Eva frowned. "Anyone could have." "No." Walter's answer came quickly. "They didn't." He explained what the electrician had found. Burned insulation, a loose terminal, heat building near lint. Eva's face changed. There are apartments upstairs. 6 children. Yes. She looked toward the ceiling. Walter noticed the fear in her expression had nothing to do with herself. Everyone's fine, he said. Eva exhaled. Good. Walter studied her. You didn't know anybody was watching you, did you? Eva glanced toward the camera. I assumed cameras were there. But you didn't know I was watching. No. Every morning you clean, we use the space. You pick up other people's trash. Eva folded her arms. Mr. Bennett, if you're trying to decide whether to ban us, you don't need to make me prove I'm a decent person first. Walter became quiet. Eva continued. We shouldn't be sleeping here. I know that. Then why pay for laundry every night? The question irritated her. What I watched the footage. Sometimes you wash half a bag of clothes. Eva's jaw tightened. Because it's a laundromat. You could sit here without paying. I could. So why don't you... Eva looked at Noah, then back at Walter. Because needing somewhere to sit doesn't make it mine. The words landed between them. Walter's expression shifted. For an instant he saw Evelyn Bennett standing in another laundromat decades earlier. I'm not asking for charity. Walter sat down. Eva did not. Finally he said, You can't sleep here anymore. Noah lowered his eyes. Eva felt the sentence like cold air entering a room. She had known this would happen eventually. Still, knowing did not soften it. All right. She turned toward Noah. Put your shoes on, baby, wait. Eva looked back. Walter continued. I'm not putting you outside tonight. Then what are you saying? I'm saying this room is not safe for a child to sleep in. It's a business. My insurance won't allow it, and frankly, neither should I. Eva waited. Walter reached inside his coat again and removed a folded sheet of paper. Not money, not a check. He placed it beside the plastic envelope. I need an evening building attendant. Eva stared at him. Want someone to inspect the machines. Log maintenance issues. Check the payment stations. Make sure the cleaning contractor is doing what I pay them to do. Why are you telling me? Because you've already been doing half of it for free. Eva almost laughed. I turned off one dryer. You noticed one dryer before a building full of people did. That doesn't make me qualified to run your property. No. 7 years supervising hotel operations might. Eva looked at the paper, but did not touch it. Suspicion replaced fear. What's the catch? Walter almost smiled. There's the question I was waiting for. He nodded toward the ceiling. Studio apartment 2D is vacant. Eva's expression hardened. I can't afford an apartment. I didn't ask if you could. I'm not taking charity. I'm not offering charity. Walter heard Arthur Rosen in his own voice. The realization nearly stopped him. Instead, he leaned forward. 90-day employment trial. Real wages. Real hours. Temporary housing included as part of the compensation while you stabilize. Everything written down. Eva said nothing. Noah watched both adults. Walter slid the paper closer. You don't have to say yes. Eva finally sat. She read the first line, then the second. Walter expected relief. Instead, she looked up. How many hours? 25 a week to start. A W-2 or cash W-2? Who handles maintenance emergencies? I do. What happens to the apartment after 90 dead days? Walter paused. Eva raised an eyebrow. You said everything written down? Walter nodded slowly. Yes, I did. For the first time that night, he understood exactly why this woman had survived as long as she had. She was not looking for rescue. She was looking for terms she could stand on. Walter pulled another chair toward the table. Okay, Ms. Butler. He took out a pen. Let's write the terms. By 2:41 a.m., Eva had asked Walter 11 questions. Walter had expected gratitude. Instead, he got an employment negotiation. What days Monday through Friday? Some weekend coverage if we agree beforehand. Paid, of course. Same hourly rate. Yes. What exactly does light cleaning mean? Walter looked at her. You really were a supervisor. For 7 years. He crossed out a vague sentence and rewrote it. Noah had fallen asleep again, this time sitting upright with the recovered rocket sock curled in his hand. Eva noticed Walter looking at him. That's why I'm asking. I know. No, Mr. Bennett. I need you to understand. Walter set down his pen. Eva lowered her voice. I can survive a bad agreement. He shouldn't have to. Walter did not answer immediately. Then he nodded. Fair? They continued. 25 hours a week, an hourly wage, evening inspections, maintenance logging, payment station checks, basic customer issues, no electrical repairs beyond shutting equipment down in an emergency. The studio apartment upstairs would be included temporarily as part of the 90-day employment arrangement. Walter would put the housing terms in writing separately, so there could be no confusion later. Eva read every line. Walter did not rush her. Finally, she placed the paper down. What happens if I'm bad at the job? I fire you. Eva studied him. I mean it. So do I. No keeping me because you feel sorry for Noah. Walter leaned back. Ms. Butler, I've fired people I liked. That's not an answer. A faint smile touched his face. All right. If you don't meet the requirements, I treat you exactly as I would any other employee. And if I do, then we discuss what comes after 90 days. Eva nodded. That's an answer. Walter extended his hand. She looked at it for a second, then shook it. Her grip was firm. Walter thought of his mother. Eva thought of the 3817 in her envelope. Neither said what the moment meant. Walter stood. Want to see the apartment? Eva looked at Noah. Tonight it's 2 floors away. She gently woke her son. Noah. His eyes opened. Are we leaving, sort of? Walter picked up one of the bags before Eva could object. She took it from him. I've got it. He released it without argument. They climbed the rear stairs. Noah moved slowly, still half asleep. Apartment 2D sat at the end of the second-floor hallway. Walter stopped in front of the door. The place isn't pretty. Eva almost laughed. At this point, pretty is not high on my list. Walter unlocked it. The studio was small. 1 main room, a kitchenette, a bathroom with outdated tile. The walls needed paint, and a faucet dripped steadily into the sink. There was no furniture except an old wooden chair someone had left behind. Noah stepped inside. He looked around. This is ours. Eva's heart tightened. For a little while. Noah walked to the window. From there he could see the laundromat sign glowing below. We live upstairs from the washing machines for now. That's kinda cool. Walter watched him. I'll have a smoke detector replaced in the morning. Faucet, too. Eva walked through the studio carefully. She checked the window latch, the bathroom, the outlets, the lock, especially the lock. She turned the deadbolt once, then unlocked it, then locked it again. Walter noticed, but said nothing. I can bring a full cot tomorrow, he said. Eva looked at him. Is that part of the employment agreement? Walter blinked. Then he understood. No. Then we'll figure it out. He nodded. Good night, Ms. Butler. Mr. Bennett. Walter left. The door closed. Eva turned the deadbolt. Click, the sound was small. But after 6 nights of listening for the bell above Riverside's entrance, it seemed enormous. Noah stood in the middle of the empty room. Where do we sleep? Eva looked at their duffel bag. Luxury accommodations. Noah smiled. You said that about the chairs. I have a limited vocabulary. They spread sweatshirts and clothes across the floor. Eva gave Noah her coat to use as a pillow again. He changed into his rocket socks. Both of them. He lifted his feet proudly. See, I see. You were right. About what lost doesn't always mean gone. Eva smiled. Go to sleep. Noah lay down. Within minutes, his breathing became slow and steady. Eva remained sitting against the wall. She should have been relieved. Instead, her body seemed unable to understand that it was allowed to stop guarding him. No machines hummed, no strangers entered, no headlights swept across glass doors. Only the faucet. Drip, drip, drip. Eva looked at the employment agreement, then at her plastic envelope. 3817. She took out a pen and wrote something on the back of an old grocery receipt. 25 hours. Hourly wage. Bus expenses. Food. Phone. Savings. Her life had changed less than an hour earlier, and already Eva was calculating how to stand without the arrangement beneath her. That mattered, because Walter Bennett had opened a door. But Eva had no intention of spending the rest of her life standing inside someone else's kindness. At 3:26 a.m., she finally lay beside Noah. Before closing her eyes, Eva looked toward the apartment door. A deadbolt. A real one. For the first time in weeks, she knew nobody could simply walk through that door. Her eyes filled. She wiped them before the tears could fall. Then she slept. At 7:12 the next morning, Noah woke first. Sunlight slipped through the blinds. He sat up momentarily confused. Then he remembered. Mom. Eva opened her eyes. We're still here. She looked around the nearly empty studio. Yes, Noah smiled. Downstairs, a dryer started. The vibration traveled faintly through the floor. Eva listened. Yesterday, that sound had meant survival. Today, it meant work. She rose, folded the clothes they had slept on, and placed them inside the duffel. Then she found her shoes. Walter had given her 90 days. Eva intended to make every one of them count. On Eva's first official evening shift, she arrived downstairs 12 minutes early. Walter was waiting beside the payment station with a clipboard. You know your shift doesn't start until 6, I know. Then why are you here at 5:48? Eva took the clipboard. Because I don't know the building yet. Walter looked at her. You slept in it for 6 nights. That means I know 3 chairs and a dryer. He almost smiled. For the next hour, Walter walked her through Riverside properly. Water shutoffs, breaker panels, emergency contacts, cleaning schedules, coin collection procedures, payment terminals, which dryers made harmless noises, and which noises meant something was wrong. Eva wrote everything down. At Lakefront Inn, she had learned that memory was useful, but systems were better. By the end of the first week, Riverside had systems Walter had never known it needed. Eva created a simple inspection sheet. Machine number, time checked, problem observed, action taken. She recorded lint buildup, loose handles, strange vibrations, leaking seals, and payment errors. Walter found the sheets excessive, until they saved him money. Washer 8 is taking payment twice, Eva told him one morning. It can't. It is. How do you know 3 customers complained? Customers complain about everything. Eva handed him her notes. Tuesday, 7:14 p.m., Wednesday, 6:38. Last night, 8:02, Walter called the payment processor. Eva was right. A software fault had been charging some card users twice, while Riverside's records showed only 1 transaction. 2 days later, she found a second machine underreporting cash cycles. Walter stood in his office staring at the numbers. How long has this been happening? Could be months. He looked at her. You always this annoying when I'm being paid. That earned the first real laugh she had heard from him. Eva also reorganized the lost and found. Previously, everything had been thrown into one plastic bin. Socks, children's shirts, keys, reading glasses. A stuffed bear. Eva labeled smaller containers and began recording dates. Walter watched her one evening. You expect people to come back for 1 sock. Eva folded a child's red mitten sometimes. It's a sock. Sometimes it isn't. Walter looked at her. Then he remembered the blue rocket sock and said nothing. Upstairs, the studio slowly began resembling a home. Not because Walter furnished it. Eva did, carefully. A church thrift store sold her a small table for $12. Gloria gave her 2 kitchen chairs after insisting they had been occupying her basement for 15 useless years. Eva tried to pay. Gloria refused. So Eva cleaned and folded 3 large bags of linens for her. "Stubborn woman," Gloria muttered. Eva smiled. "Community service." Gloria laughed so loudly Noah heard it from the hallway. Noah now had a place to do homework, a real table, a lamp, a cereal bowl that stayed in the same cabinet every morning. Small things. But small things mattered. Eva continued sending job applications during the day, though something inside her had begun shifting. For the first time, she wasn't only searching for the next employer willing to take her, she was noticing what she could build where she already stood. Walter noticed too. He began asking her opinion before ordering replacement machines. Eva began reviewing customer patterns. The laundromat was busiest on Sundays and weekday evenings. Hospital scrubs appeared constantly because a medical complex sat less than 2 miles away. "People bring enormous bags in here after 12-hour shifts," she told Walter. "That's what laundromats are for. They're exhausted, so..." Eva gave him a look. Walter sighed. "You've got an idea." Not yet. But she did. She simply wasn't ready to say it aloud. Their working relationship developed an unexpected rhythm. Walter knew buildings. Eva knew how people moved through them. He saw machines. She saw habits. He noticed revenue. She noticed why customers stopped coming. One Thursday evening, Eva entered Walter's office to leave maintenance reports. He was on the phone. "I'm trying to help you, Lauren." Eva stopped. Walter's voice tightened. "No, I'm telling you what makes sense." A woman's voice came faintly through the phone. Walter interrupted. "You need to talk to the bank before you..." Another pause. "Because that's the solution." Eva quietly placed the reports down. Walter saw her. Lauren said something. Walter's jaw hardened. "Fine." He ended the call. For several seconds, he stared at his phone. Eva turned to leave. What she looked back. Walter frowned. "You have that face." "What face?" "The one that says you think I did something wrong." Eva hesitated. "You want my opinion?" "No." "All right." She reached the door. Walter sighed. "Fine." Eva turned. What did she want? She's having trouble with her business partner. And I told her what to do. Did she ask? Walter stared at her. "She called me." "That's not what I asked." He leaned back. "You sound like Denise." Eva softened. "Your wife," Walter nodded. "She used to say I treated conversations like broken outlets." Eva smiled slightly. "Do you, if something's broken, you fix it. People aren't outlets. I'm aware." "Are you..." Walter gave her an irritated look. Eva picked up the clipboard. "When Noah tells me he misses our old apartment, I can't fix that. I can listen. Sometimes that's the job." She left. Walter sat alone. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Finally, he picked up his phone. Lauren answered on the 4th ring. What now, Dad Walter almost began with advice. He stopped. I called to listen. Silence. Then Lauren gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "Who are you?" Walter smiled, despite himself. "Apparently, I'm working on something." She began talking. This time, Walter did not interrupt. Downstairs, Eva was cleaning lint from behind a folding table when she heard footsteps. Walter appeared. He held the maintenance report she had left. "You missed dryer 7. Eva looked up. "What?" "It's making a grinding noise. I checked it at 6. Started after 8. Eva stood. Walter handed her the report. Then he added quietly, "Lauren and I talked." Eva nodded. "Good. I listened. Did it hurt considerably?" Eva smiled. Walter walked away. She watched him for a moment. Weeks earlier, she had believed Walter Bennett was the man who might throw her and Noah into the cold. Instead, he had opened a door. Now, in a way, neither of them had expected Eva was opening one for him. Later that night, after Riverside emptied, Eva sat at the folding table with a notebook. At the top of a clean page, she wrote, "Riverside Wash and Fold Service." Below it, she began listing numbers, customers, labor, pickup routes, hospital shifts. For the first time since losing Lakefront Inn, Eva was not calculating how long her money would last. She was calculating how something might grow. By the 8th week, Walter no longer checked the Riverside cameras to see whether Eva was doing her job. He checked her reports. That difference mattered. The laundromat was cleaner, machine downtime had dropped, customer complaints were being documented instead of forgotten. Walter had even stopped finding handwritten maintenance notes stuffed beneath his office door, because Eva had created a simple logbook everyone could understand. On a Tuesday morning, Walter called her upstairs. Eva entered carrying her notebook. "You wanted me sit? That usually means either a raise or trouble." Walter slid a folder across the desk. Maybe both. Eva opened it. The first page contained a job title: Building Manager, Riverside Property. She looked up. Full-time 35 guaranteed hours. More responsibility. Better pay. Eva continued reading. The position included tenant coordination laundromat, oversight contractor, scheduling supply management, and basic property administration. It was good work, stable work. Then she reached the housing section. Apartment 2D would remain available to Eva and Noah at no charge for as long as she held the position. She read the sentence twice. Walter watched her. "Well?" Eva closed the folder. "No." Walter blinked. "No, not like this." His expression hardened. "You haven't even asked what the salary is. The salary isn't the problem. Then what is the apartment?" Walter leaned back. "You need somewhere to live." "I have somewhere to live." "Because it's part of your current arrangement." "Exactly." Walter frowned. "I'm offering you stability." Eva took a breath. 8 weeks earlier, she would have imagined anyone rejecting free housing had lost their mind. But 8 weeks had taught her something. Safety and independence were not always the same thing. "I'm grateful," she said. "More than you know? Then I'm confused. I don't want my job, my home, and Noah's security tied to one decision made by one person." Walter stared at her. "You think I'm going to throw you out? No. Then what are we discussing my life?" Her voice remained calm. "I need to know that if Riverside disappears tomorrow, I can still pay rent somewhere else." Walter looked almost offended. "I'm trying to help you, I know." Eva leaned forward. "And you already did." The words softened him slightly. "You gave me a door, Walter. I walked through it. Now I need somewhere to walk next." She opened her notebook. "I have another proposal." Walter looked suspicious. That notebook again. Eva turned it toward him. Across the top of the page were the words, "Riverside Wash and Fold." Walter sighed. "You've been thinking about this for 6 weeks. Eva showed him the numbers. She had tracked customers who arrived in hospital scrubs after long shifts. She had spoken casually with elderly customers who struggled with heavy laundry bags. She had noticed parents dropping clothes into washers, leaving to collect children, then rushing back before cycles ended. "They don't just need machines," Eva said. "Some of them need time." Walter studied the page. Eva proposed a wash and fold service operating from a section of Riverside that was currently used for storage. Customers could drop laundry before work and collect it later. Eventually, pickup and delivery could be added within a limited radius. Walter tapped the notebook. "Labor, start with me. You already have a job. Adjust my hours, supplies, bulk detergent costs less per load. Insurance, I called 2 commercial laundry operators and asked what coverage they use." Walter looked up. "You called competitors. I called businesses in other cities." A reluctant smile appeared. "Of course you did," Eva continued. "I don't want the apartment free. Give me a temporary reduced rate while we test this. If the service works, increase my compensation and transition me to regular rent. And if it fails, then we know." Walter studied her. You'd rather pay rent than accept free housing. I'd rather know I can." That silenced him. Walter remembered Evelyn Bennett standing in Arthur Rosen's laundromat. "What do I owe you? You show up at 10 tomorrow." Arthur had understood that the goal of help was not to make someone permanently dependent on the helper. It was to make the help unnecessary. "What are you asking for?" Walter said. 90 days. Eva turned another page. "Base wage for managing the program. Small performance bonus if revenue reaches agreed targets. We track every expense. You want a bonus already? If I make you more money." Walter laughed. Eva did not. "I'm serious, I know, that's why it's funny." He stood and walked toward the window. Below them, Riverside's sign was visible through the glass. Walter had owned the building for 12 years. He had always thought of the laundromat as a simple business. Machines turned, people paid, bills got covered. Eva saw something else. He turned. 90 days. Eva waited. Trial only. Agreed. "We set revenue targets together. Agreed. You don't hire anybody without approval. For now." Walter narrowed his eyes. "For 90 days. Eva smiled. "Agreed. And the studio I start paying reduced rent next month." Walter shook his head. "You negotiate like you're buying the building." "Not yet." He stared at her. Eva allowed the smile to grow. "That was a joke. I'm not convinced." They shook hands. This time the handshake felt different from the one at 2:41 in the morning. Then Eva had been accepting a chance to survive. Now she was negotiating a chance to grow. That evening she told Noah over spaghetti, "So we're staying for now, and you're the boss." "Absolutely not, Mr. Bennett, technically." Noah considered this. "Are you going to become the boss?" Eva laughed. "Eat your spaghetti." Later, after Noah slept, Eva returned downstairs. Riverside was quiet. She stood beside the 3 plastic chairs where he had once slept. They had not changed. Neither had the fluorescent lights. But she had. Eva opened her notebook and drew a line through the heading she had written weeks earlier. Then beneath it, in larger letters, she wrote 90-day pilot. She looked toward the machines. For months her life had been measured by what was disappearing: money, housing, work, security. Now she was measuring something else. Possibility. And this time Eva Butler was not waiting for someone to rescue her. She was building the next door herself. 3 months later, Riverside Laundry sounded different at 7 in the morning. The machines still rumbled, coins still dropped into slots, dryer doors still slammed, but now another sound filled the back corner. Eva Butler calling out names. "Peterson, 2 bags ready at 4. She checked a tag and turned. "Mrs. Mitchell, yours is already done." Gloria Mitchell stood beside the counter, wearing her plum-colored coat. "Already you said you needed your sheets before noon." "I said no such thing. You said your sister was visiting. That does not mean I needed them early." Eva raised an eyebrow. Gloria smiled. "All right, maybe I did." The Riverside Wash and Fold pilot had started with 6 customers. By the end of the first month, there were 19 regulars. By the end of the third, there were 43. Hospital workers became the backbone of the service. Nurses dropped off scrubs after 12-hour shifts. Medical assistants left laundry before catching buses home. Older customers appreciated not having to lift wet sheets between machines. Eva had been right. They were not buying laundry. They were buying time. Walter had been skeptical about delivery. Then Eva showed him the numbers. Now Riverside offered pickups within 3 miles on weekday mornings. The service was not making anyone rich, but it was profitable. More importantly to Eva, it was hers in a way that mattered. Not ownership, responsibility. She knew which customers preferred unscented detergent, which elderly clients needed bags carried to their doors, which nurse worked overnight and should never be called before 300 p.m. Walter knew revenue. Eva knew people. Together, Riverside became better at both. Eventually, Eva needed help. She interviewed 4 applicants. The final candidate was a 30-year-old mother named Kiara Davis. Chiara arrived 10 minutes early, wearing an inexpensive blouse and carrying a resume with a family shelter listed as her mailing address. Eva noticed immediately. She said nothing. During the interview, she asked about punctuality, customer service lifting requirements, and folding experience. Chiara answered honestly. "I've never worked laundry. What have you done warehouse packing?" 2 years. That's repetitive. Yes. Fast. Had to be. Accurate. If I wanted to keep my job. Eva handed her a basket of mixed towels. "Show me." Chiara looked surprised. Then started folding. Neat, consistent, fast. Afterward, Eva asked about availability. "I need to pick up my daughter by 4:30. I can schedule mornings." Chiara hesitated. "You know where I'm staying, yes? And that doesn't bother you?" Eva met her eyes. "I'm hiring someone to fold laundry and deal with customers." "Are you able to do that, yes? Then that's what matters." Chiara started Monday. Eva did not hire her because she was homeless. She hired her because she was good. But she structured the schedule so being a mother did not automatically disqualify her. That distinction mattered. Upstairs apartment 2D had changed too. Eva now paid rent. Not reduced rent. Full rent. The first time she handed Walter the payment, he looked at the envelope. "You know you could keep the reduced rate another month. I know. You enjoy giving away money." "I enjoy receipts." Walter accepted it. Eva kept the receipt in her plastic envelope. The same envelope that once held $38.17 now contained a small emergency fund insurance documents, Noah's school papers, and the registration for a used Toyota Corolla. The car was 12 years old. One door had a scratch. Noah called it beautiful. He also insisted the rocket socks were responsible. On career day at school, he wore them with khaki pants and sneakers. Eva noticed while making breakfast. "You're wearing those?" "They're lucky. They're getting small. They still fit, barely." Noah pulled the cuffs higher. See, Eva laughed. "Your circulation disagrees." He refused to change. Walter changed in quieter ways. He called Lauren more often. Not every conversation went well. Sometimes they still argued. But he had learned a new question. "Do you want advice? Or do you want me to listen?" The first time he asked, Lauren became silent. Then she said, "Who taught you that Walter looked through his office window at Eva downstairs? Someone annoying." Months later, Lauren came to Riverside. She hugged her father beside the payment station. Walter looked uncomfortable, but he did not pull away. Eva pretended not to notice. Life did not transform into perfection. Eva still watched every dollar. Noah still sometimes asked whether they could ever move somewhere with a bedroom just for him. Walter still became impossible when contractors were late. Machines still broke. People still struggled. But survival was no longer Eva's only plan. One Thursday night, shortly before closing the wash and fold counter, Eva noticed a man sitting alone near dryer 9. She had seen him 2 hours earlier. His laundry had finished long ago. Yet he remained. He was around 60, wearing a faded work jacket and worn boots. A large duffel bag rested between his feet. His name was Raymond Ellis. Eva had seen it on his laundry card. He checked the wall clock, then the windows, then the clock again. Eva continued sorting orders. At 11:48, Raymond entered the restroom carrying a toothbrush. At 12:05, he returned and sat down. At 12:37, he bought the cheapest coffee from the vending machine. At 1:10, he still had not left. Walter emerged from the back office. "You heading upstairs in a minute?" He followed Eva's gaze. Raymond was pretending to read an old newspaper. Walter understood. "You want me to handle it?" Eva shook her head. "No." She remembered 3 plastic chairs, a transparent envelope, a little boy sleeping with one sock. Most of all, she remembered how terrifying it had been to know that someone might look at her circumstances and decide those circumstances were her identity. Eva poured fresh coffee into 2 paper cups. She carried them across the laundromat. Raymond looked up cautiously. "I didn't order that. I know, I can pay. I didn't ask you to." His expression tightened. Eva recognized that too, so she placed one cup on the table and sat across from him with the other. Actually, she said I could use some company. Raymond studied her. Across the room, Walter quietly returned to his office. He did not interfere. Eva took a sip. Then she looked at the duffel bag beneath Raymond's feet. Months earlier, someone had seen more than her suitcase. Now it was her turn to see more than his. Raymond Ellis did not touch the coffee for nearly a minute. He looked at the cup, then at Eva. You work here, I manage the wash and fold service, so you know I've been sitting here too long. Eva smiled slightly. I know your clothes finished 2 hours ago. Raymond looked toward the windows. I'll leave. I didn't ask you to. His hand tightened around the duffel bag. Eva recognized the gesture. It was the same instinct that had once made her hide her suitcase beneath a folding table. She could have asked the obvious question. Do you have somewhere to sleep? Instead, she asked, what kind of work did you do? Raymond looked surprised. Warehouse? How long? 26 years. What happened? Company moved distribution to Indiana. He finally picked up the coffee. I figured I'd find something fast. Eva nodded. But fast took too long. Raymond looked at her carefully. Something like that. His savings had lasted 11 weeks. Then came car insurance, medication, food, and a motel room that became impossible to afford. Now he slept in his Chevrolet when the temperature allowed it. When it didn't, he found somewhere open. Like Riverside. I'm not asking for money, Raymond said. I know, I can pay for the coffee. I know that too. Eva let the silence settle. Then she asked, license clean? Raymond frowned. What driver's license? Yes. Any accidents? Not since 1998. Can you lift 30 pounds? He stared at her. Why, Eva pointed toward the wash and fold counter. We're adding morning pickups, 6:30 to 11:30. 3 days to start. Raymond said nothing. I need somebody reliable, Eva continued. Somebody who can follow a route, handle customer bags carefully, and show up on time. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you an interview. That distinction changed something in his face. Not disappointment, dignity. What time? 6:30. Raymond glanced at the clock. It was 1:26 a.m. You mean today? I mean today. A quiet laugh escaped him. I'm already here. Then no excuse to be late. Raymond finally smiled. Across the laundromat, Walter stood inside the darkened office doorway. He had heard enough. For a moment, Riverside disappeared. Walter saw Arthur Rosen behind another counter decades earlier. You know how to clean, then Evelyn Bennett, then Eva. Different winters, different people. The same door. Walter quietly stepped back into his office. This was not his moment. 3 days later, Raymond began the pickup route. He was never late. 3 weeks later, Eva gave him more hours. She never asked him where he slept. Eventually, Raymond told her he had saved enough for a room in a shared house. Eva simply said, good. She understood that sometimes celebrating too loudly could make survival feel like spectacle. Winter moved slowly across Milwaukee. One snowy morning, Noah sat behind the Riverside counter while Eva organized invoices. He had grown enough that his blue rocket socks were becoming painfully small, though he still refused to admit it. Mom, what? Noah held up a tiny yellow sock from the lost and found basket. This has been here forever. 2 weeks. That's forever for a sock. Eva smiled. What should we do with it? Throw it away. She looked at him. Noah reconsidered. Or keep it. Why? In case somebody comes back. He placed it carefully into the basket. Then he looked down at his own feet. Remember when I lost my rocket sock? I remember. I thought it was gone forever. Eva stopped sorting invoices. Through the front windows, snow drifted across the sidewalk. She could still see another version of Riverside. 3 plastic chairs pushed together, her coat beneath Noah's head. 3817 inside a transparent envelope. the terror she had felt every time the doorbell rang. Now the same room held labeled orders, delivery schedules, maintenance logs, and employees who called her when they needed decisions. Kiara was folding towels near the back. Raymond was loading morning deliveries into the Riverside van. Walter stood outside talking to Lauren, who had arrived carrying breakfast. Nothing had changed because one wealthy man had appeared with enough money to erase Eva's problems. Walter had not erased anything. He had noticed what desperation had hidden from everyone else: her discipline, her experience, her judgment, her ability. Then he had opened a door. Eva had walked through it herself, and once she was standing again, she had held that door for someone behind her. Noah interrupted her thoughts. "Mom." "Yeah, why do you keep all the lonely socks?" Eva looked toward the lost and found basket. Then she looked at her son. "Because lost doesn't always mean gone." Noah smiled. This time the sentence meant more than a missing sock. It meant a job could disappear without taking a person's ability. A home could disappear without taking a family. Security could disappear without taking dignity. And sometimes people who seemed lost were simply waiting for someone to look closely enough to see that they were still there. The bell above Riverside's door rang. A customer entered carrying a heavy laundry bag. Eva stood behind the counter. "Morning. How can we help?" Outside, snow continued falling. Inside, the dryers turned and the door stayed open. Sometimes the most powerful form of kindness is not rescuing someone. It is recognizing what they are still capable of when their circumstances make everyone else stop looking. Eva did not need someone to become the hero of her life. She needed a safe place to begin again, honest work, and one person willing to see more than a suitcase beneath a laundromat table. Walter gave her that opportunity, but Eva supplied the discipline, courage, and work that transformed it into a future. And Walter learned something too. None of us is completely self-made. Somewhere in almost every story of survival there was a teacher, a stranger, an employer, a neighbor, or a friend who opened one door at the right moment. Real kindness should not make another person smaller. It should help them recover the strength to stand on their own. And perhaps the best way to repay the person who once opened a door for us is not merely to thank them. It is to hold that door open when someone else arrives. If this story reminded you of someone who once believed in you when life was difficult, tell us about them in the comments. Share this story with someone who may need that reminder today, and subscribe if you want to join us for more stories about dignity, kindness, and the quiet choices that can change a life.